This is Jill Pack with the Seasons of Joy podcast. This is episode number 113, entitled A Conversation with Kristen Rutter. Are you a woman of faith who is struggling to navigate your current season of life? Do you feel like life is just happening to you instead of for you? My name is Jill Pack, and I'm a certified faith-based life coach and a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I want you to know that no matter your season or your circumstance, it is possible to create a more joyful life, and I would love to show you how. Are you ready? Let's go. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the podcast. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for being here. I am looking forward to sharing with you my conversation with my new friend, Kristen Rutter. You're going to love it. But before I get started, I wanted to remind you about what I am offering this summer at Seasons Coaching. I am offering a 4 coaching session package. You get 4 one-on-one private coaching sessions with me that you can use over the summer. And Summer Spark coaching is like having a personal cheerleader just for you, ready to help reignite your spark and guide you through life's twists and turns with confidence and grace. With me by your side, you will learn how to overcome obstacles, discover hidden strengths, and grab hold of opportunities for growth and joy. So if you're interested in turning this summer into an amazing adventure, bursting with energy and endless possibilities, just click the link in the show notes to learn more about Summer Spark Coaching. Now on to this week's episode. I am here with my friend Kristen Rutter. I'm so excited to have her on the podcast today. You are going to love her. I recently met Kristen at a retreat that I went to and got to know her a lot better, and it just was so fun. And so I wanted to have her on and share her thoughts and insights. So I'm going to turn the time over to you, Kristen, and let you introduce yourself, and we'll go from there.
Awesome. Thanks, Jill. Thanks for inviting me to be on your podcast.
Yeah.
I'm very excited to get a chance to reconnect. So, yeah, my name is Kristen Rutter, and I am a faith-based life coach, and I'm wife to my husband. We've been married for 33 years. We have 4 kids that are now grown and out of the home, and I have 5 grandkids, and I have been a yoga teacher for, I think, about 13 years. So I've been doing yoga for over 20 years, but I got certified, and that kind of was what kind of started me on the path to like self-development and self-improvement.
Mm-hmm.
So
I love that. Yeah. So what led you to coaching? Like, let's jump into that. Like,
let's jump into
what brought you to this. Like, it's so funny. We have a lot of similarities. I've been married for 33 years.
Awesome.
And I have 5 kids. So pretty similar. So anyway, yeah. So tell us your story. Like, what brought you here?
Well, I've always been interested in like human development and self-help. Like, I was in a book group, and I would always pick the self-help books, and they'd be like, no more self-help books.
Yeah.
But I just felt like I was doing all the things, but something was missing. Like I just was actually kind of struggling with maybe my self-concept, with my role as a mother. I didn't know how to regulate my nervous system. I didn't even know those words at the time. I didn't know. I was really critical of myself, and I just felt like I was struggling and barely keeping my head above water is what it felt like. And my cute sister-in-law was like, do you listen to podcasts? And I was like, no. She's like, okay. She helped me get it on my phone. I started listening to podcasts of life coaches, and my mind, I went, oh my goodness, this is the how. I knew what I wanted pretty much, kind of, but I couldn't figure out the how. I was like carrying so many heavy things, and I had a lot of really heavy limiting beliefs and ideas about who I was. And when I started recognizing like, oh, there is great power in my thoughts and understanding, like just starting to like break things open like that was so transformational for me. And so I was like, I went to a week long certification, or well, not a certification. I went to a week long training with Jody Moore, and I just loved it, and knew that I wanted to learn how to be the best life coach that I could be. So I really wanted to go to the life coach school, but I was having a hard time, like what the reality of it was, is that I didn't feel like I was worth, my education wasn't worth that much money. That was a really limiting belief that I had. And I just was like, oh, well, we can't afford it. I mean, that was kind of what I thought. But then I figured that all out. I got clear on that. And anyway, so eventually I did go to the life coach school. And the funny thing about it is my husband ended up doing it with me at the same time.
I love that so much.
That was like the most awesome. It was the year that our youngest went on his mission. And that can be kind of a readjustment for a relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, we know so many people in the mid-season of life that get divorced, right? Or really struggle in their marriage because
Yeah, because all of a
all of
sudden,
a sudden, yeah.
oh, it's just us, baby. Let's go.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, we had something that gave us great purpose together. Like we were in separate like groups that we went through, but we
Mm-hmm.
would study together. We would talk about it all the time,
Yeah.
and really ended up being like the most amazing transition from being a full-time mother and caregiver to now having this new phase of life where I was really excited about what we were doing. And it's kind of fun. My husband ended up 2 years later quitting his corporate job and is doing coaching full time now. So,
Wow. That's so cool.
yeah,
And as you and I both know, there's a lot of women life coaches, not
yes,
as many men. And men need them just like right? There's a real need there. So
yeah.
that's so cool.
And it's been awesome to watch because life coaching makes a lot of sense, especially the way he approaches it. It makes a
Mhm.
lot of sense for men. It helps men
Mhm.
take these emotions that feel, or, emotions or situations that feel overwhelming and helps give them words and helps them, it's just more logical, helps them
Mhm.
to understand how they can feel empowered. And really, like also, women have the benefit of a lot of women talk to other women.
Yeah.
Men don't seem to talk about those real things as often.
Yeah.
It's not like you're talking to your buddy about like, how are you and your wife doing?
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
very different.
Yeah, on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you and your wife doing? That doesn't happen as much.
Yeah.
And to have someone that's safe and can hold that space for you and really gets men. It's been
Mm.
awesome to
Yeah.
see the changes of the men that he coaches.
Yeah. That's so cool. And even just the thought came to me like helping men see it helps them to be able to see maybe how a woman works. Like
Yeah.
why there's maybe an issue in the marriage. Oh, it's what she's interpreting. Like,
Yeah.
how can we talk and resolve this, right? And
Yeah.
address maybe some of those beliefs or those thoughts that are standing in the way. But I just think that as a couple, that's so powerful to understand. Like, oh, it's not necessarily she thinks I'm this horrible person. It's that she's believing something about our relationship or this interaction that's causing her to feel this certain way. I don't know. I just think it can invite some compassion and understanding on both sides.
Yes.
We
Yeah.
realize that.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
been really awesome to watch.
So cool. So you each do your own business
Yeah.
just
Yep.
with his group of people.
Yeah. He coaches kind of like, I can't remember like exactly how he describes it, but it's like successful men that know something's missing.
Yeah. Okay. I love it.
And and he helps them to kind of get clarity on that and helps give them the tools to really work on those things that are the most important to them.
Yeah.
And
And
then,
so,
yeah, I coach women who want a more meaningful, deeper connection with themselves, with others, and with God.
mhm, mhm.
And so a lot of my clients, I would say, like, are really good at checking all the check marks, but maybe life doesn't feel full or purposeful, or they feel kind of empty.
Mhm.
And so, like, helping to understand all of that. A lot of my clients are really good at being compassionate with everyone else in their lives
Yeah.
and are caretakers of everyone else and make sure everyone else is taken care of. But they feel that maybe they are not as compassionate with themselves as they are with other people.
Yeah.
They have a really loud inner critic, or maybe they just have these really strong limiting beliefs, things that they believed about themselves.
hmm
Like some of my, like when they feel like something's wrong with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just want to like take their little shoulders and say, nothing's wrong with you.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
are
Don't
not broken.
Yeah. Well, and I think the thing that's really kind of, I don't know, kind of come into my vision right now, or like the forefront of my mind, is this idea of fixing, like that we need fixing. And I think so many people think that they need to be fixed. And doesn't mean we don't want to improve or do better. No, but it's like this idea that they are a problem to be solved. I don't know. I just think that there's a lot of women in our stage of life, right? That they look back at maybe the things they've done or in their life or in their relationships that they just think's a mess and that they totally screwed up, right? And it's like that they're this big problem. And it's like, no, like you're not a problem to be fixed. You're a human being that gets it right sometimes and not so much the other time. And that's okay. Yeah. So I
So
love
true.
that. I just think that, yeah, like, yeah, we aren't a problem to be solved.
Right. And I think it's kind of like embracing our humanness
hmm
and our divinity.
Yeah.
Like we are both human and divine,
Yeah.
and both are great. And
Yeah.
when not like we are not here to be perfect, but we are here to grow and learn. And this is that human condition that puts us in so many experiences that we're like, okay, we're going to learn something here.
Yeah. Oh, it's time to grow.
Oh, here we go.
We
Yeah.
go. Yeah, I love that. So, would you say, like, as you work with your clients, is that the biggest stumbling block for them is to just have that compassion and love for themselves?
Yeah. Isn't it interesting that we kind of have to start there?
hmm
It
Yeah.
takes me back to, the scriptures where it's like, love God and love your neighbor as yourself. And we always, I don't know, at least me, I don't remember when I was growing up hearing that as yourself part very often.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that the way I learned to love and accept myself is going to be reflected in how I am able to love and connect to others and to God.
Yeah.
And so if I'm always like critical of myself and I'm always seeing where I'm lacking,
hmm
it's really hard to feel love because love is like this unconditional energy of like just acceptance. And we think that if we accept ourselves just as we are, that we're going to just start going downhill real fast.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
just think the beautiful thing about it is that when we do accept who we are, then we are able to change. But it's not from a place of fear of not being good enough. It's not from a place of feeling like we are a disappointment to everyone in our lives. It's from this place of like, yeah, I'm human and I'm totally awesome and I'm totally a mess.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And
think
it's
when
okay.
Yeah, and I think when I really grasped that, it just was such a relief, and I was coaching someone today on that very thing. It's like they had this story about that they weren't a good mother, right? And it's like when you can open your mind and go, yeah, sometimes I wasn't, but a lot of times I was. And so I'm both. And she was like, that was just such a big relief to
Yeah.
realize like, oh, I am both, and that's okay. And of course, I think the power comes when we embrace the duality of that. It frees us to to grow in the direction we want to. And one of the things I was talking to her about was this idea of guilt versus shame. I think guilt has a total place in our life. Like guilt is that self-awareness where, oh, you know what? I really didn't show up the way I wanted to in this interaction. What can
Yeah.
I do different? Right? Where shame is so much deeper than that. And it's shame is not a catalyst to change, where I think guilt can be. But I think for so many women our age, we start with the guilt and then we just drop into shame so fast that we don't use the guilt to move forward.
Yeah.
It pushes us into shame. And then we just keep being the person we don't want to be, you know? So I think, yeah, there's so much power in just embracing the both, the
Yes.
divine and the human. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. And I love what you were just saying about guilt and shame. And I think that where we get into where it gets hard with shame is when we make it mean something's wrong with us.
Yeah.
Guilt is just like, I've made a mistake. And I think shame kind of reflects back to us like, I am a mistake.
Yeah.
Like,
Totally.
something's wrong with me again, right?
That problem to be fixed.
Yes, and that
Yeah.
problem to be fixed. And it's like, no, maybe there's something that we want to correct or do differently, but it doesn't mean something is wrong with you at the core of who you are. You know?
Yeah, totally.
And I think it's understanding that we are inherently good.
Yeah.
We're just like when we get really serious and look at who we really are, it's like, oh, I really do try to do good more often than not, even when I make a mistake.
Yeah.
Oftentimes when I make a mistake, especially like in motherhood, it was when I broke it all down and untied it a little bit,
Yeah.
like kind of separated it out. It would be like, oh, I was either trying to protect myself or trying to protect someone else or something, or,
Yeah. Yeah.
something like there's a good reason behind it.
Yeah.
It just didn't come out very well.
Yeah. Yeah. And we learned from it, right? Like, I just think, I don't know. I say this so much on my podcast, but I don't think it can be said enough that we came to the mess.
That's what the fall is.
Yeah. Like,
The fall is a mess.
yeah. And when we're in those, like that ebb and flow and that push and pull, it's like, that's the opposition. That's the growing part. Like that's where it happens. So when we feel that little tug, we know the plan's working.
Exactly.
Right? It's going according to plan.
Going according to plan. I love that.
Yeah.
It's so true.
Yeah.
One thing that kind of came to mind when you were just speaking about the client that you were talking to this morning about feeling like she's not a good mom. I just recently had kind of this shift in how one of the things that I really struggled with was mom guilt and feeling like I wasn't a good mom. And one thing that's kind of really helped me to shift this a little bit for myself is to recognize the difference between motherhood as the relationship and caregiving as all the other stuff, like
Yeah.
all the stuff. So I used to think like, oh my word, I'm a terrible mother because I can't get us to church on time. Well, I had lumped everything into motherhood because in my mind, I was like, oh, a mother has a clean house. She gets her kids to church on time. She teaches her kids to read before they get to kindergarten. She also has like healthy snacks and meals. And she also like, this was what a good mother was. And I couldn't do it all. I couldn't even come close. Like I felt like, and like, this was the thing that was the most important thing that I was doing. And I felt like I was failing miserably. And it's because I had lumped all of this into motherhood, where when I separate it out and think of motherhood as my relationship to my children, then there's caretaking or caregiving, whichever. Maybe
Yeah.
caregiving. I kind of like that for caregiving. Let's do caregiving. I like
Yes.
that.
I like that too.
Caregiving. That's like, making sure they have the food and we make sure the clothes are washed but other people can help with your laundry, or you can go out to dinner on a night and it doesn't make you a bad mother. Or there is like when I started to be able to kind of separate that out in my mind, it helped me to set the caregiving responsibilities in a different compartment in my mind. and freed me up to like, how can I focus on my relationships?
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love
And I
that.
just wish I would have had it
Oh, yeah.
15 years earlier, right?
Yes.
But
Amen.
there's something to have been, there's something I just have come to really trust the process of like, I don't think that God is as worried about the timing of things as we are sometimes.
Hmm.
Sometimes.
I totally agree. Yeah. Like if you think about it, like, again, that goes back to this idea that the expectation was perfection, that we have to figure it out from the very beginning, where no, the growth comes through the messy of it. And even the yelling or the messy house or the whatever thing happened as we were raising our kids, like that is part of it.
Yeah. Because how else do my kids learn to forgive? If they had a perfect parent,
Yeah.
how would they learn forgiveness?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like the perfect person for my kids to practice forgiving because I give
Yes.
them so many opportunities, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Well, and I've always said, like, if the goal is to become like the savior and love like the savior, what better vehicle than family relationships? Because they're going to test us. Like, you think of who the savior interacted with on a regular basis. It was people that despised him, but yet he showed up in love in all situations, right? And so it's like those really test our ability to have unconditional love.
Yeah.
It's really easy to love people that are easy to love.
Right. I've done a lot with meditation. And I used to say, yeah, like it's easy to keep peace when you're a monk sitting up on a hill by
Yeah.
yourself, like
Yeah.
that's one thing. But can you learn to have peace in your life and live with a family? And you bring
Yeah.
the peace from the inside out into the situations that you're
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's where the rubber meets the road, I think.
Yeah.
Like, can you do this when it's hard?
Yeah.
Not when you're sitting by yourself somewhere and quiet. Like most of us can speak
Nothing's
to.
Yeah, nothing's causing you a problem. Yeah, like I love that. I think but how can you create peace within unless you are in those relationships that test and try us? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So good.
I would love to hear, how do you create peace within? What are some of your thoughts?
Yeah. I think that it really is, yeah, it's where we go in our mind and the thoughts we choose. For me, that is really the go-to. I did a podcast on this once. I call it my peace portfolio.
Mm.
And I have an app called Trello. And so it's easy to do it in here because you can make lists. But I have a peace playlist. So music, I have visuals of things that bring me peace. So sometimes like that's something I can open on my phone and just visually see something, right? So I think it's inviting all your senses and depending on where you are and what you need. Sometimes it's even just placing my hand on my heart and saying, that's fine. You know what I mean? So it can look any different, any way you want it to. But I think the biggest key is going inward,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Because if we're looking for someone to give us peace or for our circumstances to be peaceful, for us to be able to feel peace,
Mm-hmm.
the likelihood of that happening is pretty slim. It feels disempowering, right? It's
Yeah.
like you're being acted upon. You're waiting for someone to change or do something for you to
Yeah.
feel.
Yeah.
Whereas when you drop into who you really are and you understand that you're human and divine and that you can connect to God and you can use all the tools, right, to get yourself to a regulated place of peace. And then you bring that to whatever, excuse me, whatever situation you're in. That is empowering to know that if you can generate that peace for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And instead of having to have it be dependent on what's going on outside of you.
Yeah. And don't you think, like, as we were talking, like the thought that came to my mind is, I think a way to be able to generate peace for yourself really ties back to what we really started talking with, like that relationship with self, having that confidence and love and understanding of who we are is actually what's going to allow us to be able to create that peace for ourselves. Right? If we don't have that confidence in ourselves that we can even do it, or that it is our choice, or that we have that ability or power to do it, we won't be able to. So it really, creating peace for ourselves starts with our relationship with self.
Yes. And for me, that's why I needed to find the life coaching tools that I've learned. Going back to that how to.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just me reading another book. Like I needed to learn how to practice this, and I needed to understand kind of those, I call them background beliefs. Like they are kind of really broad beliefs, but if you believe like, I don't know, the one that just comes to mind and we've already talked about is like something's wrong with me.
Mm-hmm.
If that's always playing in the background, how when you go into a store and then like 2 days later, you're singing like living on a prayer and you're
Yeah.
like, why is this playing in my head? And you're
Yeah.
like, oh wait, I heard that in the store the other day,
Yeah.
you know? And I think that we have thoughts like that that are just playing in the background. They've been there a long time. And we don't even recognize we're thinking them, but they show up in these other things. They show up in other ways. And when
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking like something's wrong with me, then how do I show up in relationship to my husband? And anything he says kind of feels like he's poking that sore spot on me and saying, like if I feel really self-conscious about something's wrong with me and he says something, I take
Yeah.
everything personally.
Yeah.
I'm looking for all that validation. Well, my mind is looking for all the validation, like, yep, something's wrong with you. And he just hit it.
Yeah.
Now protect yourself. Now start arguing with him.
Yeah. Prove him
Like
wrong.
prove him wrong, right?
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
just see like how that happens.
Yeah. So true. And this same client that I was talking with, it was interesting because one of the initial thoughts we explored, the pain point is what she thought her husband was saying by a certain phrase that had nothing to do with her motherhood, right? But that's how she interpreted it. And it was that realization. It's like, oh, the reason why this hurts so bad is because I believe this on some level. I'm believing like that. It's not really about what he thinks,
Right.
about what I'm thinking about myself.
Yeah.
And I'm projecting that onto whatever they say, whatever they do, right? We're reinforcing that. So yeah, that's usually it's painful because it ties back to what we're believing about ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. I love that. And sometimes I like to think of it as like, when you get like a cut and you can touch anywhere else on your, like say you had a cut on your finger, you can touch anywhere else on your hand, but when you hit that little pain point, that paper cut even, right?
Yeah.
Or the
So
hangnail,
painful.
it's a little hangnail and you're like, ah! And it's like, oh, when we get really aware and we start noticing these things more quickly and with, we can notice them more easily or readily, I think. When we feel that, we're like, oh, there's something there. I wonder what the story is that I'm
Yeah.
believing, right? I
Yeah.
wonder what I'm telling myself
Yeah.
that makes this feel painful.
Yeah.
Because we know the words themselves are not painful. It's if we believe them, just like you just said.
Yeah. Yeah. Or the underlying meaning, yeah, that we're giving it to that has nothing to do with what they said or done. It's just, it ties to that story, that painful story that we don't recognize at first glance, right? It's the words somebody else is saying or whatever the situation we believe is causing us to feel those things. But yeah, the greatest power we have is uncovering those stories and untangling them, like you said, like just pulling them apart and just going, I don't want that one anymore. And I don't want that one anymore. And a lot of times, I don't know if this is the same for you, but when you tell someone like, you don't have to believe that anymore. When you're ready to not believe that thought anymore, that's totally optional. Like you can do that. It's an option. And they kind of go, really? I can just not believe that? When you're ready, you
When
can
you're
just not believe that.
Yeah. And it's a lot easier when you realize that oftentimes those things that we're believing that cause us pain, I I use the word oftentimes. What I'm finding is it's all the time.
Mm-hmm.
If there's something that's causing us stress, anxiety, pain, causing us to feel those things, the truth, whatever we're believing is not true.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I have this like finding the truth in the situation helps us to be able to set that down so much easier.
Yeah. That is so true. It's the dissidence can tell us that it's probably built on a false premise,
Yes.
right? Because when we can really get curious and dig underneath, like the client I was talking about, right? Like the painful part was the belief she had about herself. And when she could open up to both, that it's both, that's when the dissidence went away. That's when the pain went away. Like I think it's interesting that relief was the word she used, right? And I remember once being coached on something that I was struggling with, and when I opened up to the duality of two things being true at the same time, that was the word I used, was relief,
Yes.
because you can set that weight down. You don't have to carry that burden the same.
Yes. And it's not just doing mental gymnastics. That's the
Right.
thing that some people say, oh, is life coaching just thinking positively?
Yeah.
No,
No.
no, it's not just thinking, it's actually truth seeking.
Yeah.
When we
Yeah.
find the truth, it sets us free. When we find the truth about what is it like for your client?
Yeah.
Is she a good mom? Yes. And is she kind of messy? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the truth.
That's the truth.
And is it okay?
Yeah.
Yes. It's
Yeah.
when you think you should be a perfect parent and when you think you should be doing these things and you're falling short,
Yeah.
that feels really painful.
Yeah. So good. So good. So when you work with clients, is that where you start? Do you start with that relationship with self, and is there something, I don't know, this is what I like to do on this podcast when I interview someone, like, is there something that you could share that they could use today? Like my
Mm,
audience is exactly who we're talking to, right? It's women in the mid-season that feel that they've fallen short in some way in their
yeah.
life, in their marriage, in their parenting, right? In their community, in their faith, whatever the relationship is, there is a belief they've fallen short or it should be different than it is or whatever. So what's something you could share with listeners that maybe would help them on this journey building that relationship?
Well, one resource that I have that they might enjoy is I have a PDF that you can get that's 5 things that you didn't learn in Sunday school that will help you to have a deeper connection with God and yourself.
Oh, I love it.
And so they're not like just pray more.
Yeah.
Just make sure you get 20 minutes, not 19, but 20
Yeah.
minutes of scripture studying, right?
Yeah. Right.
This is not what these ideas are because I really have, isn't it awesome to be wiser and older?
Yeah.
Like I am actually eating up the season of life because it's like, oh, I've had enough experiences to realize like I want an authentic spirituality.
Hmm.
When I say spirituality, I'm talking about like, it doesn't need to be religious based. It is for me, but it doesn't need to be for anyone else. But recognizing that you are a spirit, that you have always existed, you will exist, and you exist now and you're going to exist, like you're eternal, right? And recognizing that God is always trying to communicate with you. I
Hmm.
love this idea from Elder Uchtdorf. He talks about how the blessings of heaven, and I would even say like the love of God is falling down all the time, but we're the ones with the umbrellas up.
Hmm.
And I'm like, how do I put my umbrella down? Or how do I step out from underneath the trees and feel this rain of love and acceptance and light from God?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that to me, that's like, I want authentic spirituality. And that's kind of what these 5 ideas on that PDF are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, we need to connect with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We need to like feel what happens. That, well, the name, I'm starting a podcast eventually. We've kind of talked about
It's
this.
coming. It's
It's
coming.
coming. It's coming. And it's going to be called the Whole Soul Podcast because I feel like we are mind, body, and spirit. And when those three things overlap, that's where our whole self is. So
Mm-hmm.
we kind of have this thinking mind, we have our physical body, and we have our spirit. And that intersection of all of them is where we find wholeness. So
Mm-hmm.
we need to take care of our bodies. We need to take care of our spirits. We need to be aware of our minds and know how to be healthy and have good mental health. When all of that is working, we feel so much more ourselves. And it's kind of cool to think that. I love this idea that like because we are on this earth right now, we get to have this body, which is like really unique. And it's a unique experience. We've never had this experience before of having a body. And what do we often do? We criticize our body. We notice all the things that are wrong with it. We discount feelings that the signals that it's giving us. And it's like, getting to know yourself is getting to know your body and understanding who you are, mind, body, and spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
that is
beautiful.
so much fun.
Yeah.
And you start to realize like, you know what? You can just learn to love, you can just accept and love your body just as it is, even in this messy, fallen state.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Because when we love it, right? Like, and I speak from experience, having not in the past, right? I think most of us do. But once you kind of embrace you as you, right? You notice the things it does for you. When we, right? So for so many years, it was what it couldn't do, what was wrong with it, how it needed to be different, right? And so it left no room for love and appreciation, right? But once you can just like, yeah, it's pretty amazing all the things that work together to live. I get to breathe. I can see, I can walk, I can do things. And so I just, yeah, I love that idea because if we can just open up to the amazingness of it, and that's another thing I help people with. It's like for me, and I remember a coach talking about how they thought they were amazing. And it was like, I'm never going to be able to say I'm amazing. Like that just feels so weird and conceited, right?
Yes.
But when I started like, no, you know what? I am amazing and you're amazing and everyone else is amazing because we're God's children.
Yes.
Have this experience. Like, so we're all just pretty amazing. No one's better than another person. No one's less than another person. Like, we're all just pretty amazing for the fact that we were created by God. And when I leaned into that whole concept of like, yeah, like I'm amazing. Am I perfect? Heck no. I have ways to go in what I want to do and grow and all that stuff. But when I recognize the amazingness within, it's way more fun. Like you said, I love that. Like this really is a fun time of life because I'm embracing the amazingness.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're wise enough to know, like, okay, I don't know. I just love the life has given us enough experience to know what things are serving us well and what things are not,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I say that like I always know, but I always have a coach because I don't always know.
Right. That's why we have coaches and
Yes.
we need help. We all need a different perspective for sure.
But it
Yeah.
helps me to see things more clearly,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it helps me to live with more purpose. Like there's
Mhm.
that phrase of like finding your purpose, especially
Mhm.
in this phase of life.
Yeah.
Like, oh, finding your purpose. I don't know why that always kind of rubbed me wrong. And it's like, oh no, it's
Yeah.
like creating your purpose.
Yeah.
You get to do,
You get to decide what it is, like, and, you know, I think purpose is your why. It's not your what.
Ex-
So much is our what changes from season to season, and right, like life throws curveballs. And so I think for many women our age, that's why this can be a hard time of life, is because our purpose was home and family and caregiving and all those things. And then it changes. And we're like, oh, my what has changed. So I don't have a purpose. And it's like, no, 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 no. That's just a what? That's not your purpose. Why did you do any of that? That's your
yeah.
purpose. You're like, why are you doing anything you do? Tap into that.
Yes. And all of a sudden life will open back up.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Why is expansive. The what can be a little restrictive for sure. Yeah. I love it. Oh my God. I could talk to you all day. This is so fun.
I feel the same way.
So is there anything last word you want to leave with listeners? Is there anything you want them to take away from this? And I'll put links in the show notes for your free resource. I think that sounds awesome and amazing. So I'll include that. But is there any final thing that you want to share with listeners before we leave?
Oh, that sounds like it should be so profound, whatever I say. I think that really that we're here to learn to love. And when we learn to love ourselves, it makes it so much easier to love others. And when we love others, we see God in all of that too. And it doesn't have to be in that order. It can be in different order, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think we're here to learn to love.
Yeah.
And I had a really hard heart for a long time. I was really probably protecting myself because of things that were hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I learned that I am good and God is good and others are doing their best, and their best sometimes is kind of messy like mine,
Mm-hmm.
it just helped me to kind of open up my heart a little bit more. And so I think that that's what I would say is like, you are love. You just are. Like, the kingdom of God is within. That love is within you. God is love. That love is in you. We just need to learn how to access it and to feel it and allow ourselves to feel it and know that we're worthy to feel it.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. I love it. Thank you so much for coming on, Kristen. It's been so fun to have you and have this conversation. So I know there's someone that needed to hear this today. So thank you so much.
I think it was me.
It was probably you and me. Like, who cares if anyone listens to this? We had a really good conversation.
Right. Yeah.
But I will. So tell people how they can find you, and I'll be sure to put that all in the show notes too. But where can people learn more about you and see updates on when your podcast comes out?
Yes. Hopefully I'm hoping for June is my hope. But
it'll happen when it happens, right?
It's going to happen when it happens. And I'm learning to just trust that process, even though there's part of me that's like, no. Okay. They can find me on Instagram at Kristen.Rutter with 2 T's .coaching, or my website is KristenRutterCoaching.com.
Okay. Awesome.
Those are the 2 places to hook up with me.
Okay. Awesome. I'll put that in there and your free resource, and it's awesome. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jill. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to the Seasons of Joy podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if you liked what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share with your friends and family. If you want to learn more about me or how to work with me, just visit my website, www.seasons-coaching.com, and have a joyful week.